I want to welcome to the program the Honorable Greg Abbott. He is a Republican governor from the great state of Texas. Greg, how are you?
I'm doing great, Joe. How you doing?
Governor, I'm living the dream, and I always appreciate you coming on the program. There is a lot going on today, and I want to get into the special session. I want to explain to the nation what that means in Texas and some really, really important bills and laws and some legislation that we've got to talk about. But if you don't mind, you being one of the top lawyers I've ever interviewed and that I know, and you were a great attorney general in the great state of Texas, I just have to know, did you watch this James Comey thing today, and what do you take away from it if you did?
Joe, I'm going to disappoint you. I'm going to tell you that I've been working hard all day on my task as governor. I'm dealing with about 1,000 bills
I got you.
That are on my desk as we speak, and so I missed the testimony. But I will tell you, as the former Attorney General of Texas, as someone who has prosecuted cases, you cannot reach a conclusion convicting someone or even accusing someone of any wrongdoing until you have evidence supporting it. From what I saw from what Comey issued in his letter yesterday, I didn't see anything in the letter, or let's say his what he was going to initiate as his initial statement today.
Right.
Anything that showed any type of legal violation whatsoever.
And he actually says that. He says that he told the president 3 different times that he wasn't under investigation because he wasn't. And I guess the whole question here is, was there obstruction of justice? Because he said, I hope you could see your way fit to move away from this General Flynn thing. But since you didn't see it, I won't ask you about it anymore. Maybe in the coming days or weeks we could talk about it again. I walked away from it today saying you had no evidence, you don't like the guy, you didn't like being in a room with him, but there really is nothing about obstruction here. Although the other side, I'm sure, Governor, will spin it a different way. I've got to talk about the special session. Special session in Texas. What you guys do is the legislature convenes once every 2 years. And it goes for as long as it needs to go, and that it just ended recently. But because you felt there was some unfinished business, you as the governor have the right to call legislators back to Austin to work on these bills or these pieces of legislation that you think probably should be taken care of. How many how many issues are there? Is it 20? Is that the number that I heard?
It's a total of 20.
Okay.
What's interesting, Joe, is that we in Texas we meet for 140 days every 2 years. People really want to change that to have us meet 2 days every 140 years. People believe in less government rather than more government in Texas. However, there were some things the legislature did not get done.
Right.
We have in Texas what's called sunset provisions, which means that a body like the Texas Medical Board will be shut down unless it's continued by legislation. Well, the legislature did not address that, which means if we do not fix this, by September 1 of this year, the Texas Medical Board will be shut down, which means that doctors will not be able to be licensed to practice medicine, which, of course, will be catastrophic to the medical and healthcare arena here in the state of Texas. So we have to have a session dealing with that. And so I decided, you know what? If we have to come back for business, by God, we're going to take care of some meaningful business. So I'm putting on the agenda cutting property taxes in Texas. I think Texans are paying way too much in property taxes. We've got to find a way to rein it in and do something about it. And then I'm put on many other important items that Texans want to have addressed.
It's the governor of the great state of Texas, Republican Greg Abbott. Always a pleasure. All right, property taxes, I'm not going to argue with you. I pay way too much as well, Governor, and I think that you and I have talked about property taxes before. I do think something should be done. People across the nation probably agree where they are as well. Something should be done for their property taxes there. Hopefully we could start and set a good precedent in Texas. But a couple of issues that really jump out and that are causing a lot of division, not only in our state, but people from outside of our state are infiltrating and involving themselves in these issues. Number one, the bathroom bill. Number two, the sanctuary city ban. I want to start with the bathroom bill. This thing has turned into something very different than what it was going to be originally. But if I just want to give sort of a quick synopsis if I can. Right now, all it really says is if you are a government-funded entity, you have to make sure that the bathroom is reserved for people who have on their birth certificate what gender or sex they are. Now, birth certificates can be changed, so if somebody's transgender, they can go through that process and change it. But do I have that right? This doesn't apply to private businesses, right?
For one, it does not apply to private businesses, but for another, actually what we're calling for is even more simple than that. All we're calling for is a statewide preemption on local regulations. It's basically a sentence or two that says no political subdivision of the state of Texas, being a county or city or independent school district, can impose any discriminatory bathroom policy whatsoever or concerning showers or locker rooms, except which is otherwise controlled by federal government. So we're saying two things. One is if there's a federal standard that prohibits discrimination, the state of Texas is not going to violate that. But absent that, it's going to be up to the state of Texas, as opposed to a multitude patchwork quilt of regulations and schemes across the state of Texas.
Governor, do you think a good enough job has been done in explaining what this is to the people? And here's why I ask, and I'm not saying you did a bad job or the lieutenant governor did a bad job. Heck, I might be doing a bad job communicating it myself, and I'm a communicator. When it comes to the bathroom bill, the lies that are being told is that people who are transgendered will not have the availability to go to the bathroom. When clearly you and I have talked about it, Dan Patrick and I have talked about it, the lieutenant governor, this really is about dignity of everybody else, dignity and respect and safety of our young people, like in a locker room at a high school or at a bathroom at a high school. Have we gotten that message out enough? Because people will still claim this is only about discriminating against people who are different in that they're transgender. And I don't know that we're mentioning enough that it's really about safety and security of everybody else.
For one, the legislation is clear on its face because it specifically says that discrimination that violates federal law is completely prohibited. So there is absolutely no discrimination whatsoever in the legislation. For another, it's all the fear mongers who are raising up a whole bunch of arguments that are absolutely false about what this legislation seeks to achieve. All it seeks to achieve is to protect the safety and security of everyone. It doesn't matter who you are, what your background is. It wants to ensure that everyone is protected. But third, I want to tell you this, and that is there's been an increasing amount of litigation that has arisen across the United States, including a case in federal court now where a school required a boy to undress in front of a girl. And so it's these types of various standards by different school districts that are being imposed that contradict the values of parents of those students in those school districts that we want to protect these kids from.
And we reported that right here in this program. It was a horrible case. The kid was traumatized, certainly, and his parents were like, what are you doing? And the school, the administrator thought they were in the right and basically told the kid, toughen up. What's the big deal? Just do it. It was very, very strange. And Governor, you're right. We have to make sure that we offer safety and security for everybody, not just for the 0.01% of the population that seems to be confused about what gender they are. It's Governor Greg Abbott, the Republican from the great state of Texas. Got to ask you about the Sanctuary City ban. There are some dorks out there now, Greg, who are saying, hey, let's pull South by Southwest out of Austin because it's unwelcoming to illegal immigrants. When you hear stuff like that, does it make your face hurt? I mean, when I heard that, I was like, I'm sorry, what?
It made me laugh, really, because it was the United States Senator from New Jersey.
Yeah.
And I don't think anybody in Texas is going to be taking any business advice from anybody from New Jersey.
Correct.
And even South by Southwest said not so fast. They're not going to pull out because they know that Texas is the best place to do business. They know that this legislation does not discriminate against anybody.
Yeah.
All this legislation does is to ensure the safety and security of our communities. Know this, Joe, and that is important for your listeners, and that is the reason why Texas has banned sanctuary cities is so we can prevent crimes like Kate Steinle, who was gunned down in California by an illegal immigrant who had been repeatedly deported but came back in because of the sanctuary city policies in San Francisco. But it's not just Kate Steinle. In Texas, we've had people gunned down by people like that, including Welton Betts. I was called by his widow. They had attended a Dallas Cowboy game. They were driving home one night. He stopped to get gasoline and was gunned down by somebody who was in the state of Texas illegally who had been deported previously. We cannot allow Texans or Americans to be gunned down and killed in situations like this or in situations like in Travis County, where the sheriff came up with a policy that would have released back out on the streets known criminals who have been accused of sexual assault. As governor, I'm not going to allow that unsafe type of policy to exist here in Texas.
Well, there are cities, large cities, and there are counties, large counties, that are now suing the state of Texas because of the sanctuary city ban. There is a guy, Judge Nelson Wolf, who I'm sure that you've met, who's in Bexar County, for those around the country, just to fill you in, that's where San Antonio is, who actually was on television the other day lying his face off about this. He said, the police are not going to pull people over like me because I'm a white guy wearing a nice tie. They're going to pull over Hispanics and ask them for papers. He said that almost word for word, Governor. And when somebody's putting that message out there, which is not true, how do you combat that? Because a lot of people are just going to take it on its face.
Well, it's despicable that a county judge would be accusing the members of his police force of committing a crime. It is illegal on its face for a police officer to pull somebody over for racial profiling, and racial profiling is banned in this legislation. So why he would be suggestive that his own police officers would be acting contrary to the law is beyond me.
And also,
point two is Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say there's a little bit of a delay, and I apologize for that. I was going to continue by saying also the allegation is if you want to report a crime and you happen to be here illegally, you will now not report a crime because just by that contact with police, you'll be arrested and you'll be deported. What do you say to that?
We specifically safeguarded that in the legislation. If you are a victim of a crime, if you are reporting a crime, your legal status cannot be questioned. And that law did not exist before we passed this law. And so we actually created a safe harbor for victims of crime and witnesses of crime. And so any argument to the contrary is just flat out false.
It's Governor Greg Abbott, Republican, the great state of Texas, and I just think doing a great job. Last question, and I got notification of this today. You spoke with Benjamin Netanyahu, the boss over in Israel. What was that all about, and how does that benefit those who are listening now? I mean, our relationship obviously is getting stronger, I believe, because of President Trump and his relationship with Israel and with Benjamin Netanyahu. What was your talk about?
I spoke to him this morning, and I followed up on a conversation that we had previously where I promised him that as governor, I would ensure that laws were passed that would be pro-Israel. And we passed several pro-Israel laws this session. One is we passed anti-BDS legislation. There are some either governmental bodies or private companies that want to discriminate against Israel. And we say, if you discriminate against Israel, you are being hostile to Texas, and Texas will not do business with you. Separately, I let him know that we passed legislation that imposes sanctions against Iran. Remember, Iran is hostile to Israel, but also remember that President Barack Obama withdrew the sanctions against Iran. Well, he can do that at the federal level, but he cannot compel that on the states. And so we have now a statute ensuring that Texas, as an entity, as well as our political subdivisions, will continue to impose sanctions against Iran, which is an enemy against Israel and hence an enemy against Texas.
I said last question, I promise this is, and I've only got a short amount of time for an answer, but it just popped in my head that Jerry Brown just went over to China and made some unilateral agreement with the Chinese prime minister about climate change. When you see that going on, is that kind of the reason, Greg, why so many businesses are leaving California and coming to Texas?
You know, I got to tell you, I've had so many businesses talk to me about leaving California and coming to Texas, and they follow up on it, and they actually come here. One is because they have the governor like they do in California, but separate from that are the policies they've had.
Yeah.
Let's go back to sanctuary cities. I've had leaders of businesses who say they want to leave California and come to Texas because California adopts these pro-sanctuary city policies that make it unsafe for businesses to conduct their businesses there. So, yes, all Jerry Brown is doing is bringing more business to the state of Texas by pursuing his liberal agenda.
So we hope he keeps up the good work. All right. It's Governor Greg Abbott. We always appreciate the time.
The state of Texas.
Exactly right. All right. It's the Republican, the great governor of our state. Thank you so much, Governor. We'll talk again soon.
Sounds great. Thanks, Joe.
All right. Keep it here on